The boy I always loved. They say we always remember our first love, but what they never tell you is how painful it is when that love finally sees you, only to hide you again. In high school, I was the background character in everyone's story. I wasn't ugly, but I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't dumb, but I wasn't the type teachers remembered. I existed in the margins, always just there. But I saw him every day. Liam Carter, quarterback, effortlessly charming. The kind of guy everyone wanted to be near. Not because he tried too hard, but because he didn't need to. His laugh made girls giggle. His smirk made teachers forget detentions. And his kindness, that was the cruelest part of all, because it made me think he could be different. He once helped me pick up my books after someone knocked into me in the hallway. We touched hands, he smiled, and for the rest of sophomore year, I replayed that moment like it was sacred. He didn't know me. Not really. Not in the way I knew him. His favorite Gatorade flavor. The way he always scratched the back of his neck when he was nervous. How he hummed to himself before a big game. I loved him from a distance, loved him in silence. And I thought that would always be enough. 10 years later, I had my quiet little life. I worked at a cozy bookstore cafe, shared a small apartment with my cat, and had finally stopped believing in meant to be. Until he walked in. Same smile, same walk, a little older, a little sharper around the edges, but still, Liam. Emma Clark? He asked, eyes lighting up. West Hill High? Lit class? Wow, you've barely changed. I laughed awkwardly. You remember me? Of course. You always sat near the window, always had a notebook. He remembered me. He remembered me. We got coffee, then dinner. Then dinner turned into weekend movie nights. And soon, weekend movie nights turned into toothbrushes left on my sink. I couldn't believe it. The boy I had loved in secret was now holding my hand. A year later, he proposed in the most Liam way possible. Quiet, under the stars, just the two of us, and a ring tucked into the pages of a book he knew I loved. I said yes through tears. Of course I did. He chose me. We had a small wedding. He said he didn't want a big show. He'd done the public thing before, and it always felt fake. I understood, or at least I convinced myself I did. Because when someone you've loved for half your life finally loves you back, you don't question it. You just hold on as tightly as you can. But the little things started to whisper. He never posted photos of us. Never introduced me as his wife when we were with new people. At his company's gala, I wasn't even invited. It's boring. You wouldn't enjoy it, he said, brushing it off. I wanted to believe him. But love shouldn't feel like a secret. And yet, he only kissed me when the world wasn't looking. He only loved me when the lights were off. And I, the girl who had waited a decade to be seen, was still in the shadows. This time as his wife. When love hides in shadows, at first I told myself I was overthinking it. That love didn't have to be loud to be real. That some people are just private. And Liam had always been that way. Reserved, quiet, not into social media or grand gestures. But when you love someone, you notice when they start to shrink you. And I was disappearing. The first time it felt wrong was at his work event. Liam had invited me weeks before, said it was a simple networking dinner. Nothing fancy. Mostly boring real estate talk, he said. I bought a navy dress, did my hair, wrote his name on the inside of my wrist in ink like some silly teenage charm. But that morning, just hours before we were supposed to go, he came into the kitchen adjusting his tie and said, "Hey babe, something came up. I think it might be better if you sit this one out." I blinked. What? Why? My ex-client might be there. She's complicated. You know how these things go. I didn't, but I nodded. And he kissed my cheek before walking out the door. That night, I watched his Instagram account light up. A rare story post of him clinking glasses with colleagues, laughing under chandeliers. No sign of me. No mention. No wish you were here. Just him, alone. Like he hadn't left a wife at home in a navy dress, waiting with chilled wine and a beating heart. The next time I tested something, I posted a photo of us from our anniversary dinner, his hand on mine across the table. I watched the seen by list grow. Friends, coworkers, family members. But not a single like from Liam. He didn't even acknowledge the photo. The next day, he said nothing. Later that week, I brought it up casually. "You saw the anniversary photo I posted?" He looked up from his laptop. "Yeah, you didn't like it. Do I have to like every picture to prove something?" I laughed softly, awkwardly. "No, I guess not. I just thought it was sweet." He kissed my forehead and said, "You're sweet enough for both of us." But that's the thing about words. They sound beautiful until you realize they're being used to distract you from the silence. I started noticing other things. At parties, he never stood beside me. He never reached for my hand. He introduced me vaguely. "This is Emma." No, my wife. No, the love of my life. Just Emma. A name, not a role, not a place in his world. And every night when we got home, he held me like nothing was wrong, like we were still teenagers in love. He kissed my shoulder, whispered how lucky he was, but in daylight, he disappeared. I asked myself questions I didn't want to answer. Why haven't we taken a vacation together? Why don't his parents ever call me? Why don't I know any of his childhood friends? And worst of all, why do I feel lonelier now, sleeping next to someone every night than I ever did sleeping alone? I once thought love in the shadows was still love, that maybe Liam was just complicated, that I could love enough for both of us. But love that hides starts to rot, and I was starting to smell the silence. One night I couldn't hold it in. I stood in the kitchen, hands clenched on the counter. "Liam," I said, "do you love me when other people are looking?" He froze mid-bite of pasta. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." He put the fork down. "Of course I love you. You're my wife." I looked at him. "Then why does it feel like I'm the only one who knows?" He didn't answer, just got up and walked out of the room. And I stood there, heart in my hands, still invisible. Even now, not for display, it was a Friday night, and for once, Liam invited me to something that mattered, a fundraising gala for a children's literacy program. He was one of the top donors through his real estate company, and this would be the first time I'd get to stand beside him in public. I bought a dress. Not just any dress, a deep emerald gown that shimmered under soft light, hugged my waist perfectly, and made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I belonged in the spotlight too. Liam smiled when he saw me. "Wow," he said, brushing a curl behind my ear. "You look expensive." He meant it as a compliment. I laughed too easily. My heart fluttered with the hope that tonight he would finally see me. Not just at home, not just in bed, but in the eyes of others, as his. We arrived at the hotel ballroom. Golden lights, soft jazz, tables dressed in white linen, candles flickering like promises. We checked in. He gave his name. The hostess smiled. "Ah, Mr. Carter, you're at table 6. Then she looked at me, puzzled. "And you are?" Before I could answer, Liam slid his arm around me. "She's a friend, Emma. She'll be with me." "A friend?" The word slapped me harder than I expected. I said nothing, just smiled politely as we followed her to the table. As guests arrived, Liam mingled. He laughed loudly, charmed donors, shook hands with politicians. And me? I sat, alone, watching him work the room like a man who had no attachments. No wife, no Emma. Then she walked in. Hannah, one of Liam's colleagues. Tall, poised, dressed in a sleek red gown that screamed confidence. She saw him. He saw her, and the way they smiled at each other, like there was a joke only the two of them shared, it cut me open. He walked to her, offered her champagne, placed a hand gently on the small of her back. He had never done that to me in public. Not once. They chatted for 15 minutes before he glanced back at me. I was still at table 6, alone, a prop that didn't fit the stage. He finally walked back. "You okay?" he asked, voice casual. I nodded. "Who's she?" "Oh, Hannah, she's just a colleague. Works on our downtown project." "You touched her like you touched me." He paused, then smirked. "You're being dramatic." I didn't answer, because I realized I wasn't being dramatic. I was being erased. That night, I stared at the mirror for a long time. My dress no longer felt magical. My face looked unfamiliar. What am I doing? I whispered to the empty hotel room. Why am I still hoping he'll let me exist? Later, in bed, he kissed my shoulder, whispered how beautiful I looked, how lucky he was. But I felt none of it, because love shouldn't disappear when doors open. And I was tired of being someone who only existed in the dark. The next morning, I opened his phone. I had never done that before. And there, in the recently deleted folder, a photo of him and Hannah at the gala. His hand still on her back, smiling wide. No photo of me. No trace I was ever there. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat quietly, phone in hand, and whispered to myself. I married my high school crush, but he only loved me when no one was looking. The birthday I spent alone, birthdays used to make me nervous. Not because I feared getting older, but because they always reminded me how visible or invisible I really was to the people I loved. In high school, I celebrated alone more often than not. My parents divorced early, friends came and went, but I always had this dream that one day I'd spend a birthday with someone who remembered, who planned, who looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm so glad you were born." This year, that person was supposed to be Liam, my husband. He had promised me a dinner. "Don't plan anything," he said. I've got it all covered. 7 p.m., dress pretty. My heart fluttered. I bought a pale gold dress, soft silk that floated when I turned. I did my hair. Even wore lipstick, which I rarely did. At 6:45, I lit a candle on the small cake I'd bought just in case. Not because I doubted him, but because something inside me always made space for disappointment. 7:00 p.m., no texts. 7:15. I sat by the window, watching the lights from cars below. 7, Saraingsi. I refreshed my messages. Nothing. 8, Andrew, I called him. No answer. 8:12, a message. Sorry, babe, got caught in a late meeting. Rain check? I'll make it up to you, promise. No emoji, no happy birthday, no apology that felt like it meant something. I sat on the edge of the couch for 10 more minutes. Still dressed, still hoping. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, and cut myself a slice of cake. 1 candle. No song. Just the hum of the fridge and the crack in my voice when I whispered, Happy birthday, Emma. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat at the table, in a dress made for someone who never showed up, eating sugar that tasted like silence. Later that night, I heard him come home. The door creaked open around 11:30. I was already in bed, face turned to the wall, pretending to sleep. He climbed in, smelled faintly of whiskey and something floral I didn't recognize. Placed a hand on my hip and whispered, Sorry again, love, work's a mess lately. I didn't move. Didn't respond. Because something inside me had gone quiet. Not broken, just numb. The next morning, he handed me a gift bag. A gold necklace, too shiny, too generic, still had the price tag. Saw it on the way home. Figured it was your style. I nodded, said thank you. Wore it for exactly 15 minutes before taking it off and placing it in the back of my drawer. It wasn't the gift, it was the afterthought. A few days later, I found the receipt. Dated the day before my birthday. Timestamp, 10:43 a.m. He hadn't seen it on the way home. He'd bought it early. He had planned, but still forgot. Or maybe he didn't forget. Maybe he just didn't care enough to remember. I opened my journal that night and wrote, He remembers meetings, he remembers football stats, he remembers to water the plant in his office, but not me. And then, what does it mean when you're married but still feel like someone's secret? I closed the book, turned off the light, and let the darkness hold me. Because Liam wouldn't, at least not when the world was watching. The woman he claimed was just a colleague. I started noticing her name more often. Hannah. It used to be just casual. A passing mention in Liam's stories from work. Hannah said the new property downtown is cursed. Hannah brought those almond cookies you like. At first, I smiled when he said her name. She sounded nice, thoughtful, until she started sounding like a fixture. Not just in the office, but in his life. It wasn't that he spoke of her too much. It was that he never spoke of anyone else. And the way he smiled, different, effortless, when her name came up in conversation, like she was a warm memory, not just a coworker. The first time I saw them together was at a company picnic. I had insisted on coming this time. Made the potato salad. Put on a sundress that Liam once said was his favorite. He introduced me, flatly. Guys, this is Emma. No, my wife, just Emma. Like I was a friend who wandered in with the catering staff. Hannah walked over 20 minutes later. Red lipstick, perfect posture, and a familiarity with Liam that made me suddenly feel overdressed and unwanted. Liam, she said, touching his forearm lightly. You forgot the reusable plates again. He laughed like a schoolboy. The sound was soft, genuine. I watched his eyes light up. Watched him lean into her touch without hesitation. I had never seen that version of him before. Not even on our wedding day. Later, I asked him quietly, How close are you two? He looked confused. Me and Hannah, we work together, that's all. You seem comfortable? He scoffed. You're overthinking again. Come on, Emma. But I wasn't overthinking. Because something inside me had shifted from wonder to worry to knowing. A week later, Liam left his laptop open while showering. I didn't mean to look. But when you live with a ghost, you start looking for proof that he ever loved you. There was an email from Hannah. Subject, last night. My hands trembled before I even opened it. Can't stop thinking about our talk. Still can't believe you said those things. You're braver than you think. Call me later if you want to finish that conversation. I miss your voice. My heart dropped. Not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't say. It didn't scream affair. It whispered something far worse. Emotional intimacy. Words he'd never said to me in months. I sat on the couch, holding his laptop, feeling like a woman who had just walked into her own home and found the furniture rearranged. Everything looked the same, but nothing was in its place. When he walked out of the shower, towel around his waist, he saw the screen. His smile dropped. You went through my email? No, you left the door open. I just walked in. He was silent. Then, it's nothing. I laughed. Liam, she said she misses your voice. We're friends. I don't think I've ever written you an email saying I miss your voice. He stepped forward. Don't do this, Emma. I looked up. No, Liam, don't do this. Don't treat me like I'm stupid, like I haven't spent months watching you vanish in front of my eyes while handing your warmth to someone else. His jaw clenched. He said nothing, and that said everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid awake beside him, his breathing steady, mine full of glass. I thought of Hannah's fingers on his arm, of the way he laughed, of the way I used to make him laugh like that. And I realized I was never the problem. I was just never the spotlight. I was always the shadow. I asked if he loved me. He asked me not to embarrass him. I didn't plan to confront him that night. I had reheated leftovers, folded laundry, answered 2 client emails. I even reminded him to set the alarm for his meeting. It was a regular night, a boring, uneventful domestic night. But my chest felt like it was full of wet paper, soggy, heavy, about to collapse in on itself. So I said it, right there, while he was brushing his teeth. Liam, do you love me? He paused, toothbrush in hand, foam still on his lips. What kind of question is that? A real one. He rinsed, spat, avoided my eyes. Emma, please, don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking something. You're being emotional. I'm being honest. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You don't touch me anymore. You don't look at me the same. You call Hannah more than you talk to me. So just tell me, do you still love me, or am I just the girl you married because she loved you first? Silence. Thick, suffocating. Like it crawled up the walls and pressed on both of us. Finally, he spoke. You always do this. You always push and dig and dramatize everything. I'm not dramatizing anything, Liam. I'm bleeding out in front of you, and you're mad that I'm making a mess. His voice turned cold. You want honesty? Fine. You're too much, Emma. You always need to be seen, to be validated. Not everything has to be posted or announced or public. I blinked. So you don't want to love me in public because I'm too much? I never said I don't love you, but you won't say you do. He stepped closer. I love you in the way I can. Isn't that enough? No, it's not. My voice cracked. I'm tired of being someone you only hold when no one's watching. I'm tired of feeling like a burden in my own marriage. Then came the moment I will never forget. He looked at me, jaw tight, eyes hard. If you're going to keep talking like this, can you at least not do it at the restaurant tomorrow? I don't want to be embarrassed in front of my colleagues. I stared at him, felt the final string in my chest snap. Embarrassed? Emma. No, don't Emma me. I'm asking you not to cause a scene. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're not afraid of a scene, Liam. You're afraid of me finally being loud enough that people might realize you've never loved me out loud. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I curled up on the couch with an old blanket and a new pain. One that didn't cry loudly. One that just ached. In the morning, I watched him get dressed. Ironed shirt, perfect hair. Smile practiced in the mirror. We'll talk later, he said. I said nothing. He left. And for the first time in months, I sat in silence that didn't feel like drowning. It felt like clearing space. Space for the truth. Space for me. That day, I opened an empty suitcase, and I didn't pack it yet. But I looked at it. Really looked. Because maybe the next question wasn't, does he love me? But rather, when will I love myself enough to leave? The day I chose myself, the suitcase stayed empty for 2 more days. Not because I changed my mind, but because I wanted to remember how it felt to finally make a decision on my own time. Without guilt, without fear, without waiting for him to change. The first thing I did was cancel dinner with his colleagues. The reservation he made at the restaurant. The one where I wasn't allowed to speak too loudly. To ask hard questions. To embarrass him. I picked up the phone and simply said, "This is Emma Carter. I won't be attending, and neither will my husband." Then I deleted the calendar invite. And the version of me that used to shrink at confrontation. That morning, I walked to the mirror. Same face, same eyes, but they looked different now. Not softer, not sadder, just awake. I made coffee, not for him, for me. I drank it slow. Then I opened the closet. I didn't take everything. Just the things that felt like me before him. My college hoodie, my writing journal. The first scarf I knitted when I was 22 and still believed love meant safety. I didn't cry. Not when I folded clothes, not when I passed by our wedding photo, not when I picked up the book he gave me with a note that said, "I saw you before anyone else did." Because now I knew that was a lie. He didn't see me, he saw what I gave him. The worship, the safety, the silence. By afternoon, I sat down at the kitchen table, pen in hand, blank paper in front of me, and I wrote, not a goodbye, Not a letter begging him to change. Just truth. Liam, I don't hate you. That would be too easy. You're not a monster. You're just a man who liked being loved more than you liked loving someone back. I used to think you were my dream come true, but now I realize I was just your reflection. Something that made you feel adored without ever demanding to be seen. I needed to be chosen in the daylight. You needed someone who stayed quiet in the dark. So I'm leaving. Not because I want to hurt you, but because I finally want to stop hurting myself. Don't call. Don't try to fix this. Let this be the one time you respect what I'm not saying. Goodbye, Emma. I folded the letter, placed it on his pillow. Then I zipped the suitcase shut and walked out. No one chased after me. No dramatic airport scenes. No text that said, come back. Just the sound of my own footsteps. Solid. Certain. Mine. That night, I slept in my sister's guest room. Tight sheets, creaky mattress, window that let in too much moonlight. But I slept. For the first time in months, I slept. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was something better. Clarity. The love I deserved and finally found love didn't come rushing back into my life. It walked in, quietly, without knocking, without fireworks. It came in the form of peace and a bookstore. 6 months after I left Liam, I applied for a part-time job at a local independent bookshop. Something to fill the time. To remind myself that I still had passions outside of loving someone else. I wore my old sweater, the one with coffee stains and sleeves that hugged my hands. No makeup, just me. Emma Clark, the manager said. You used to do poetry readings at the library, right? I blinked. You remember that? Of course. You wrote that poem about shadows and stars, I cried. That's when I felt it. I was seen, not for who I loved, not for who I stood next to, but for who I was. Weeks passed. I shelved books, recommended my favorites to strangers, laughed again without guilt. And one day, a man walked in. He wasn't Liam, not even close. Messy brown hair, slight stubble, t-shirt with a quote from To Kill a Mockingbird. He smiled at me while flipping through a poetry collection. Do you have any recommendations for someone who's rebuilding? I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt equal. His name was Caleb. He taught English Lit at a community college, read 3 books a week, drank too much tea, owned a dog named Scout. He didn't try to impress me. He listened. On our third coffee, I asked me, I asked him haughtily, why haven't you asked about my past? He stirred his drink and replied, because I want to learn you from the present, not from your wounds. I nearly cried right there, because no one had ever said that to me. We didn't fall in love overnight. We built it, slow, brick by brick, every time he held my hand in public. Every time he introduced me proudly as my Emma. Every time he reached for me, even when no one was watching, especially then. And one evening, as we walked through a farmer's market, hand in hand, he stopped in front of a flower stall, picked out sunflowers. Why those? I asked, smiling. Because they face the sun, even when the ground is still cold. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thank you. For what? He said. For not loving me in the shadows. I never told Caleb the full story, not in detail. But one day, as we lay on the couch, he looked at me and whispered, whatever made you feel unworthy of being loved out loud was wrong. And that was enough. Because closure doesn't always come from apologies. Sometimes it comes from being held with both hands, in broad daylight. Months later, I got a letter from Liam. I didn't open it. I didn't need to, because I wasn't her anymore. The girl who waited by the window. The girl who wore dresses for someone who never came. I was Emma, no longer a shadow, but a woman who found love where it mattered most. In the mirror, in the sun, and in the arms of someone who never made her feel like too much. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.